Well, hello, my name's Adrian Gilbert and I'd like to welcome you once more to the Invisible College. Now, today's lecture is the first in a new series that I'm doing called Esoteric Astrology. And this lecture is very much intended to set the groundwork. I've called it Introducing the Signs, but it's actually it covers a lot more than just that. But before we go into that subject, we should maybe say why I think it's important to study astrology. And I think a lot of people would probably throw up their hands and say, look, Adrian, you studied science. Why on earth are you interested in something which is at best a sort of historical anachronism, but is considered by many people to be a pseudoscience? What possible interest could this have for you when you could be studying astrophysics, say, or astronomy? And my reply to that is quite simple. First of all, I think it's fun. What could be more fun than to study the stars and to study astrology and how it might reflect on your own character and the characters of those around you? But more than just being fun, it does seem to contain a core of truth. It's not for just any old reason that people have been interested in this subject. If it had no content to it, it would have been discarded and forgotten about. But we even have people like Isaac Newton. Someone once came up to Isaac Newton and said to him, "Look, Isaac, why are you interested in astrology? You know, this is complete nonsense." And his reply was to turn around and say, "Well, I've studied the subject, you haven't." When you studied it, then have an opinion. And I think that's as good a defense as I would like to give for why I think it's important to study astrology. But there is another reason to do this as well, and that is that astrology actually is the language through which one can study much else of the old Hermetic wisdom in the world. It's almost like studying your ABCs. You might not want to read nursery rhymes with your ABCs, but that's how you start off learning your ABCs. If you haven't done that, you're not going to be able to read that textbook on physics. You're not going to be able to read the great literary works that are laid out before us. You can't really go into Shakespeare. Yes, you could watch it maybe on stage, but you couldn't read the plays. And it's like that with astrology. Unless you have an understanding of astrology, a great deal of information, of culture, of ancient wisdom is a closed book to you. You won't understand why certain buildings were built the way they are, why people did things the way they did, because the astronomical basis of that will be closed to you. Now, when we go into astrology, one of the first things one comes up against is the whole concept of the zodiac. And before we go into the actual zodiac itself, I want to say a few words about the idea that we have of the stars and how they relate to us. Now, as you probably know, we live on planet Earth, I'm sure you do know that, which is spinning on its axis and which is going round the sun. And the sun in turn is one star in the billions of stars that make up the Milky Way galaxy. Well, that's well and good, but for us, it doesn't look like the Earth is spinning. It looks like the world or the universe is turning around us, that we're standing still. Stars and planets are rising in the east and setting in the west. That's how it appears to us, because that's, where we're standing. And so it's not an unreasonable idea to create a cosmology that looks at the universe from our standpoint. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to believe that, the Earth is at the center of the universe, or that we're at the center point we're the most important thing ever. It doesn't mean that. It just means that this is where we're standing. And if we want to understand the world or the universe around us, we have to start with that position. And in the ancient world, they had an idea that the stars, all of the stars, could be thought of as forming a great big sphere around us. And I love this this image I've taken from an alchemical textbook, which shows a sort of Atlas figure supporting the whole universe on his shoulders. And that universe, we can see in the center of it is the Earth, as we would recognize as a globe today. And around that, we can see this sphere of stars. And we look in detail, we can see it more clearly, what's going on there. We have a band we can call the Zodiac, with various signs written on it. You can see there Taurus and Aries and Pisces. And we see lines similar to lines of longitude running down around this sphere. Now, what is this really all about? Well, it concerns the way that we actually are measuring time as much as anything else. And yes, of course, it's a nonsense to think that all the stars are stuck on the inside of a great big glass globe around the universe. I don't think people ever really believe that. It's just a useful model. Of course, some stars are closer to us than others. Proxima Centauri, 4.5 light years away. Some of the stars in the belt of Orion, 100 light years away. So we've got vast differences in distance, yet we can visualize them all as being stuck inside this great big sphere around us. Now I want to show you some things to do with that sphere, because I've actually got a 3D model which shows us how it works. Now, this is what's called a celestial sphere or sky globe. Basically what it is, it's, as I was saying earlier, the concept that the heavens surrounding us, the stars can be thought of as being stuck on the inside of a gigantic sphere that surrounds the whole Earth. And our Earth, you should visualize as being actually inside the middle of this sphere. So if we were standing on the Earth looking up, we would be looking on the inside of the sphere. But what we're looking at from here is, you could call it a God's eye view, how God is looking down on his creation, on his heavens, with the Earth within it. So the positions of all the stars are sort of mirror images, in a way, of what we would see. We would see, looking up, we would see them laid out on the inside of the sphere, but we're now looking down from the outside, so they look somewhat reversed. But don't let that confuse you. The sphere works perfectly well in spite of that, and it shows us a number of important things that we need to consider if we're going to talk about astrology in any kind of meaningful way. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is that you can think of as, with the sphere, you can draw large circles round it in different ways. Obviously, you've got lines of longitude, which are circles that run from the poles all the way around. And those are what we call colures. Each of these big circles that we can draw is a colure. I suppose it means collar, but it's the term that's generally used in astronomy and astrology. Now, there's several colures which are important to our consideration. The first, obviously, is the equator, which you can see marked around here with these vertical lines around the centre of the globe. And the second one that we can see is marked by these little dots I don't know if you can see them very well, the sun, represent the sun. And this represents the pathway of the sun through the year. And we call this line, or this colure, the ecliptic. And again, it runs all the way around the globe, but part of it is in the northern hemisphere, the top part, and the other half is in the lower hemisphere, the southern part. And you notice that there are positions where the ecliptic actually crosses over the equator, and these positions are marked on this sky globe with these these cut lines here, marking this particular line of longitude that passes through the point where the sun crosses over the equator. And the points where the sun crosses over the equator are what we call the equinoxes. When the sun is in that position in the sky, then the days and nights are the same length. Doesn't matter where you are on the globe, actually. The Earth inside the globe, I should say. The Earth, the night and day will seem to be the same length, whether you're standing on the equator or whether you're up by the North Pole or South Pole. It will be balanced. And then when the sun comes into the northern hemisphere, as it does when we see marked around here, then the days get longer and longer until we come to a point where you can see this other vertical line marked down here, where the days are at their longest for us in the northern hemisphere. They're at their shortest, obviously, if you're in the southern hemisphere. So that marks the point of the summer solstice. And if you look at the top, you can probably see how the lines there are crossing over the colures for the solstices and the equinoxes. Because when it comes back down the other way, you get another point where it crosses the equator again, which is the autumn equinox. And then it comes down to its lowest point, which is down here. And you can see that again marked with the colure, the vertical colure there, which would be for us in the northern hemisphere, that would be our winter solstice. For those in the southern hemisphere, it's their summer solstice. So you can see that these colures are very important. But there's another one I want to draw your attention to as well. And I don't know if you can see it too clearly, but can you see how there is this sort of light band running round here? And it follows around, goes down here, goes all the way around. That is actually representing the Milky Way. And that light band is actually the millions and millions of stars that make up our galaxy. You can imagine that our galaxy, like most other galaxies, is a spiral. We're out 2/3 out from the center of the spiral, but the spiral is basically mostly in a plane. So we're looking edge on at the spiral, one side looking towards the center of the galaxy, the other side we're looking away from the center towards the outer arm. And as I say, we're about 2/3 out, so there's quite a lot of stars out beyond us, and there's even more looking the other way inwards. So that gives us this great band of the Milky Way. And one of the important points which I've made in a number of my books, particularly Signs in the Sky, is that if you notice the line down here, the line down here marking the summer solstice, it actually crosses the Milky Way pretty much at the point where the sun is crossing. So that the sun positioned at this point here, actually on the summer solstice colure, is positioned on the Milky Way. Actually, this sky globe is slightly out of date. It's actually even more so now. It should be about 1 degree further round. So the colure, the summer solstice colure crosses over the Milky Way and the ecliptic. So the three colures cross over together actually at the summer solstice. And there's something else I want to show you about this, which is also very interesting. But to do that, I must first turn off the lights. Now, with the lights off, you can see the sky globe is actually illuminated from the inside. So you can see the constellations marked out in their graphic form with the various animals and people and arrows and all that kind of thing that we generally associate with the constellations in the sky with their traditional names and how they're normally drawn. Now, you can see again how we have the Milky Way that runs all the way around. Certain constellations are on it. We can see how there's the eagle that's been shot through, Aquila, shot through the wing by the arrow Sagittarius. Above it, we can see Cygnus the swan, and then it just clips the head of Cepheus, King Cepheus in the northern sky, goes through Cassiopeia. You probably know the W-shape constellation in the northern sky, Cassiopeia up here. And then it comes round down here, passes through Perseus, and comes down here and goes between the constellation of Taurus here and Gemini. You can see the two twins here. So that the Milky Way actually passes between those two right through there. And that actually is where, as I was telling you, the summer solstice line runs over the upstretched hand of Orion. Here's Orion. Orion's belt, you can see, is right on the ecliptic, on the celestial equator. And the ecliptic runs just over his hand. So he's kind of reaching up with his club. On this picture, it's over the top of his club, but you can also think of him having his arm stretched right up. I used to call that the shake hands position. These days, I refer to it as the Northern Stargate, because for the very obvious reason that it seems to mark a special time in Earth's history when the sun is actually positioned exactly on the median plane or the equator of the Milky Way at the same time that it's at the summer solstice and over the hand of Orion. So we've got this crossover point here with the Milky Way crossing the ecliptic and the line of the summer solstice. So I call that position the Stargate, and that was actually known by the ancients. They used to believe that souls came into the world through one gateway and then they went out through the other. And in between lives, they would have to walk around the pathway of the Milky Way to get from one gate to the other. But that's also the reason why in mythology, or Catholic mythology, if I can use that term, St. Peter is said to have the keys, plural, to the gates of heaven. And that's because there's two. There's this one in the north, and then there's another one in the south, the corresponding position, which is actually in the constellation, I don't know if you can see it there, the constellation of Sagittarius over the sting of Scorpio. And that's actually very close to the center of our galaxy. And incidentally, that means that the sun was at that position at the winter solstice, or it is now. And it was at that position in 2012 at the winter solstice, which was the end of the last period of the Mayan calendar. You probably heard a lot of talk about, Mayan end date and, what's going to happen. Well, the sun was actually at that Stargate on that day, which kind of marks a punctuation mark in time. So that's very interesting. And if you imagine that when the sun is at those stargates, at the solstices, it's not always in that position, because the Earth has a slight wobbly motion where the pole is shifting. It goes round in a circle. The position of the summer solstice, but also the equinoxes, changes over time. It actually moves through the zodiac at a rate of 1 degree every 72 years. So when we look actually at our zodiac, and we look at the positions where the spring solstice occurs, the spring and the spring and autumn equinoxes rather occur, we see that the spring equinox, which we call 0 degrees of Aries, is actually not in Aries. There's Aries there. It's actually in Pisces, the fish. It's one of the two fish. There's two fish in Pisces linked together. And it's going to be moving into Aquarius. Here's Aquarius down here. Now, you'd be justified if you were wondering, what's this all about? I mean, if we're not going to call people the first degree, if we're going to say the people who are born in the first period of spring, when the sun crosses over into the northern hemisphere, if we're going to call them Aries, but actually it's in Pisces, what's going on here? Surely we should be calling those people Pisces, and so on through the zodiac. I mean, our Aries people ought to be Pisces, our Taurus people would then be Aries, Gemini would be Taurus, and so on. Well, of course, that zodiac is what astronomers use. They actually do label the first day of spring as being in Pisces. But we're not actually concerned with the sidereal zodiac at all. For one thing, the lengths of the particular signs of the zodiac are not all the same. When you look at the actual stars and the positions of the constellations, some are much larger than others. For example, the constellation of Virgo is enormous, whereas something like Aries is really rather small. So if we were going to follow the signs of the zodiac literally, or the constellations of the zodiac literally, to determine who's in what star sign, then we would find there were far fewer people in some signs than there are in others. But in actual fact, what we do is we chop the entire zodiac up into 30-degree chunks of a circle. 12 times 30 is 360 degrees for the full circle. And by convention, we make the first sign of the zodiac Aries. And that's because what we're concerned about is not the stars. It's not that your sun is in position of some particular constellation and filtering through hidden rays coming from that constellation. It's not that at all. What we're talking about actually is the relationship between the sun and the earth. We're talking about the way that the light, the amount of daylight increases during the springtime, reaching a climax on Midsummer's Day, 21st of June, then diminishing, coming to sort of back into with an equinox, equal nights, equal day, position at the autumn equinox, and then going into wintertime when the days become shorter and the nights longer, reaching the low point at the winter solstice, round about Christmas. And then it builds again back up to the spring equinox when the days are equal again, and then moving to summer. We go through a full cycle. And actually what we're following is what's called a sine wave of light. And if we look at that, then we're partitioning that into 12 chunks. And that is actually what we're looking at with our 12 signs of the zodiac. We're looking at the relationship between the earth and the sun with the sine wave of light that builds and diminishes. we're not looking really at the stars. Sorry, I think that seems a little bit odd, but it's because the dial, the face on the dial has slipped round by 1 degree. And there's other things that is important for. But for this, for what we're looking at here, in terms of personal sun signs, signs of the zodiac, we actually don't really need to consider the stars at all. Now, it's customary to draw the tropical zodiac like this. We put the first sign, Aries, on the left-hand side below the horizontal line, marked with 0 degrees. 0 degrees there stands for 0 degrees of Aries, the first point of spring. And we count then 30 degrees, we have Taurus, 30 degrees brings us to Gemini. The end of Gemini, the vertical line at the bottom there, makes the position, we call it Imum Coeli, the lowest point. And then we have another 30 degrees Cancer, 30 for Leo, 30 for Virgo. And then the next horizontal line is the descendant between Virgo and Libra. And then we have another 30 degrees, brings us up to Scorpio, 30 degrees more Sagittarius, and 30 degrees brings us to the vertical line with the mid-heaven, the top part of the zodiac. Then another 30 degrees Capricorn, 30 for Aquarius, and 30 Pisces brings us back to our 0 degrees of Aries position. Now that's the tropical zodiac, and of course when we're doing a horoscope as such, these signs will be twisted round according to wherever the sun was actually in the sky at the time, but we're not going to go into that at this point here. What I want you to see next is the way that the light varies according to the time of year. And you can see here that the sine wave I was talking about, where the amount of light grows from the vernal equinox, which is 0 degrees of Aries, grows up to reach a peak at the summer solstice, the longest day, and then it diminishes to cross over the horizontal line again at the autumn equinox, and then comes down to the winter solstice, and then back up again to the vernal equinox. Now, we split up our signs according to certain attributes. So it's the way astrologers work. Doesn't necessarily mean that the person under that sign is specifically blowing up with air if they're an air sign, or got a very, very fiery temperament if they're a fire sign. These are ways that we try to understand the nature of the different signs, and we use them as a system for breaking down, differentiating what we're working with. So we end up with 4 elemental triplicities. There are 3 fire signs, 3 air signs, 3 water signs, and 3 earth signs. And we put them onto these lines, drawing these triangles, linking the different types of signs together. And we can draw all this up on a table, which we see here, where we have listed the signs down the left-hand side here. We've got Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and then we got the elements that are appropriate to them: fire, earth, air, water, etc. And then it starts again: fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. And we've got their polarities. Now I've included a third polarity for the mutables, which we could think of as being like, if you imagine you have a bar magnet, you've got a north pole at one end, you've got a south pole at the other end, and you've got a neutral point in the middle. So they're like the neutral point, with the other 2 as the 2 poles. And then finally, we've got the rulers, which are planetary rulers, and I'm not going to go into those at this point, because we'll be doing a separate lecture on the planets. but those are generally speaking regarded as the planets which are most in harmony with those signs. And within the tripliciters themselves, there's always one which is what we call a cardinal sign. That's one that belongs to the four emergent points, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn. And we talked a lot about Aries being the first sign of spring. But of course, Cancer is the first sign of summer, Libra the first sign of autumn, and Capricorn the first sign of winter. Then we have four fixed signs which are sort of midway in that season. And we have Taurus as the fixed sign of spring. We have Leo as the fixed sign of summer. We have Scorpio as the fixed sign of autumn. And we have Aquarius as the fixed sign of winter. So those are the four fixed signs. Then we have four transitional signs which lie in between those. And those are, let me get this right, Gemini, the last sign of spring, Virgo, the last sign of summer, Sagittarius, the last sign of autumn, and Pisces, the last sign of winter. So those again tell us something about the nature of the signs, whether they're cardinal, the first ones, they're fixed, which are the middle ones, or mutable, which are the transitional signs as you come to the end of one season to prepare for the next. Well, of course, astrology is not just a theoretical science, it's a very practical business as well, and always has been. And we can see in this wonderful slide here, a sort of probably a 17th century, I would think, astrologer casting a horoscope for his client. And there he is, he's pointing at the sky, and we can see the moon there and the sun, and we can see the stars, and he's drawing the client's attention. But I'd like you to look at what's on the table here, and you can see that he's actually got a celestial sphere on his table and a pair of dividers there, which presumably he's using to measure out things, to measure angles between particular planets and stars on his celestial sphere. And he's drawing a horoscope. And in the old days, when this astrologer would have been practicing, they used to draw their horoscopes in a square. You can see the signs of the zodiac laid out around the edges of the square with a sort of zigzag pattern. Curiously, instead of putting in Gemini in the top right corner, which should be between Taurus and Cancer, he's actually put the symbol for Saturn. Now, I'm not quite sure why the illustrator's done that. I'm sure it's deliberate, but maybe there's some clue to his own horoscope in that. And if we look to the side of the drawing, we can see here an open book. And this open book, on the left-hand page, we can make out geometric pictures. There's a circle which looks like a picture of a celestial sphere. There's a triangle. And on the right-hand side, we can see what's clearly a table. Now, in the old days, when you were casting a horoscope, you needed tables of houses, and I'll be talking about the houses in a later lecture. And you also needed what's called an ephemeris for the year that you are working on. And you would be able to look up in the ephemeris, and it would tell you exactly the positions of the planets on particular days, and you could calculate the hour to the minute using a little bit of mathematics to see where those planets were positioned in the signs of the zodiac, and where the signs of the zodiac were positioned in relation to the ascendant and the descendant, and the midheaven and the Imum Coeli, which I was talking about earlier. I don't want to go into all of that because it gets rather complicated when we start going into that. What I will say is that these days, very few astrologers use an ephemeris and a table of houses anymore. We now have computer programs to do the job for us, which is a lot easier, and I suppose has democratized, perhaps one might say diluted, the skill of the astrologer. In the old days, when you needed to be able to do all the calculations and work it all out carefully, that acted as a barrier to keep out people that weren't very good with using their noddles. Perhaps now we have more astrologers, but maybe some of those are not as skillful as maybe they ought to be and have not been filtered out by this process. But never mind, astrology is not just a science. It's not just about calculations. It's very much to do with the heart and to do with the intuition. And a good astrologer uses his intuition all the time. But I want to take us now through the various signs of the zodiac themselves and talk about the nature of the people who come under that sign. Now, I realise that this is actually an oversimplification. If you're going to have a horoscope done properly, you need to know the time of day you were born, obviously the date that you're born, so that the astrologer can then work out the position in the sky of all the different planets within the different houses, within the signs of the zodiac and their angles one to another, and he takes all this data together and cooks it in his own mind and produces his horoscope, your birth horoscope, which hopefully, if he's a good astrologer, will give you a good insight into your character. Now, obviously, I can't do that here, not without a particular person. But what we can do is we can discuss the sun sign, which is the major influence on your inner self, as it were, and determines the window that you're looking out. That's the way I like to put it, that each of us are looking out of a certain window, and it's characteristic of our sign. For instance, I'm a Leo. I tend to see the world through the eyes of a Leo. If I were a Gemini, I would see the world rather differently. I'd be looking at the same things. Yeah, two of us in the same room were seeing the same events. One would see, I would see through the eyes of a Leo. The Gemini would see through the eyes of a Gemini, and we'd have quite different experiences, quite different appreciations. And so what I want to do is to take you through the various signs of the zodiac, and give you an appreciation of what that sign is like. And you'll be able to look at your own signs. Oh yeah, I am a bit like that, aren't I? Or you say, oh, he's totally missed the point there. But also you'll be able to see, if you know the signs of people that you're close to, your family members, people you work with, your friends, you'll maybe understand a little bit more where they're coming from if you understand what window that they themselves are looking out through, which may not be the same window as yourself. And when you can appreciate that, then you can make allowances. And that's one of the first stages in self-development, is learning to see the world as others see it and to make adjustments accordingly. But also, that's the beginnings of freeing yourself from your own sign. Now, I'm not going to go into that at this point either, but you could say that the part of the path of development is to make conscious to ourselves our own biases. And if you can see your own bias, then you can begin to free yourself from always looking at things the same way. I'm not saying you'll do it totally, because within this life you're going to have that particular window that's your window that you look through. But you will be able to start finding the other signs within yourself and beginning to appreciate things in a more balanced, a more open-minded way. So let's press on then, and we'll look at the first sign here, which I've got, which is Aries. And for each of these signs, I'm going to give you some keywords. I'm going to tell you the good qualities of the sign. I'm going to tell you what people in that sign should watch out for. And I'm also going to give you an image that kind of sums up the sign. And the reason I'm doing that is that if you keep the image in your mind, in your memory, then it's a very quick shorthand way of saying, oh yeah, right, it's one of those. Yeah, and it'll click you in and help you to focus on the qualities of that particular sign, whichever it might be. So let's start with Aries. And the keywords that I've got here are emergence of the new. Aries people love things which are new. They're great ones for novelty. They're sometimes referred to as the child of the Zodiac because they always want to be into something different. They love starting new projects, new things, new happenings, new beginnings. They're excited by it, and they love excitement. And they're also natural leaders. And the reason for that, when I say leader, I do mean leader. They would be the guy who's first out of the trench. Yeah, because they like to lead from the front. They're not backroom boys working out sort of the tactics and skills. They're not the general on his horse sitting a couple of miles away from the battlefield. They're the guy out in front leading the charge. And that is typical of Aries because one aspect of that is they're ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet that goes with Aries. And Mars leads to bravery. And it can lead to aggression, but it's also this sense of courage, of wanting to go forwards. So Aries' good qualities then are leadership, enterprise, forcefulness, and drive. So when you see all those advertisements in newspapers that say must have drive, we're looking for leaders, we're looking for people that can take things in a new direction. What they're saying is, are you an Aries? Do you have Aries in your chart? Actually, they're very foolish if they do say that always, because that's great, when you're pioneering something new, but Aries aren't always very good at keeping things going. They like the first charge, but there's always the mopping up to do afterwards. And any project that you start, there's always the boring bit that comes after you started the new project. The boring bit that you don't, if you're an Aries, you really don't really want to get involved in that. You'd rather be doing something else that's new. So what Aries have to look out for is an inability to finish things once started. That's very typical of Aries. I've known a few Aries in my life, and I can tell you that it's true, that the nature of the sign, the nature of the Aries, and the more Aries they are, the more this is going to be true. They really don't want to have to keep doing routine work. They really don't want to keep things, ticking over the way they've always done, because they want to be doing it something different, something new all the time. And another thing they need to watch out for is anger. Particularly anger when their way is blocked. Aries are ruled by Mars, as I said, and they're not patient people, not usually. They want things and they want it now, and they want it their way. So if things get in their way, they can get very angry very quickly. Fortunately, because it is a fire sign and it moves quickly, that anger usually blows through quite fast. So you could have a situation where they're in a shouting match and they're having a fight almost with someone about something, but an hour later they'll be having a drink with them and arms around each other, and they're all sociable again. This is also typical of Aries. It blows through quickly. So they have a hot temper, but they don't nurture grudges. Not usually. Things work quickly with Aries. They can be rash. There's rashness, the impetuosity of the moment is something that Aries also needs to look out for. And if you're a wise Aries, you'll seek to take counsel from other people first before dashing in, because that can save you an awful lot of trouble. Because sometimes other people looking through their windows and say, well, that really isn't safe, you really don't want to go down that route. They might say, oh, I know someone else that tried that and it really didn't work. Carelessness. Yeah, this is the other problem with Aries, that, dashing in, sword going backwards and forwards, trying out, we're going to shake things up here. Well, you can get very careless when you do that, and you can end up not only losing the baby with the bathwater, but destroying the bath at the same time. So Aries need to take a moment, take a deep breath, and go into things a bit more methodically, and they will often be a lot more successful that way. And they're prone to accidents for the same reason. They can be reckless. Reckless drivers, for example, cause an accident. Anyway, I want to give you the image for Aries, and it's a very graphic, clear one, which I think we'll all understand and recognise immediately. And it's the battering ram. Yeah, Aries is the ram, and they used to put ram's head, made of bronze or iron, I suppose, later on, and they'd use that to smash down the doors of the city that they were sieging. Well, that's exactly what Aries is like. It's this bashing in energy that crashes through and breaks through into things. So the image to take with you to understand the sign of Aries, I would say, is the battering ram. Now, the next sign we have is quite different. You might think it's similar because they're both animals, but it's not. It's Taurus. Taurus is the bull of heaven. The key words that go with Taurus are stability, dependability, and inner strength. In other words, where Aries is this wild energy that crashes out and smashes through things, breaks the egg, can't have an omelette without smashing an egg first. Taurus is a powerful energy that's reliable and dependable and strong. The idea of strong foundations can support a mighty tower. The idea of the enormous strength of the bull as it pulls a plough, cutting through a field. It can work on, it can keep going, hour after hour, day after day, doing the work, ploughing the field, getting things done, making things happen. It's an earth sign, Taurus. Aries was a fire sign. Taurus is an earth sign, and it is very much connected with this idea of the earth and its fertility. Taurus is the first. It's the sign that rules in May, the time when there's a lot of flowers and a lot of growth in nature. The energy of nature coming through and forcing and building the flowers and making things emerge into their fullness is very much Taurus. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, and of course Venus is the planet we link with love and flowers and May and all of that. And Taurus can be a very romantic sign as well as being the earthy, strong man of the Zodiac. So their good qualities are their perseverance. Tauruses seldom give in, They don't like to give in. They take it as a personal affront if something is too much for them. They like to see things complete, and they have a love of routines. Aries can't be done with routines. They'll, give it to someone else to do. I've got other new things to get on with. Taurus like routines. They like stability. They like order. Taurians like to wear a uniform because a uniform is a recognition of position within the social order. Doesn't matter what the uniform is, whether it's a policeman with the sergeant stripes or whether it's an earl wearing an ermine, with a little coronet on his head, or whether it's just a plain business suit. Taurians like to wear a uniform, and they like to know where they stand within a situation. They don't like surprises. They like things to be as they should be, organised, ordered, laid out in a grid. And the other thing about Taurus is that they keep going. They're reliable. If you've got a job that needs doing within your organisation, then Taurus is your man to make sure it actually happens. They're reliable in what they do. They like things to be, they don't like change. They don't like you to be upsetting the apple cart. But as long as what you want is within the bounds of what they understand as being their job description, they'll get on and do it. And they'll keep doing it day after day, month after month, year after year, because they like routine, they like order. But there are things that the Taurian also needs to look out for. And the first of these is stubbornness. We've all, I'm sure you've met Taurians in your time. I've met quite a few. And one thing about them is they don't like to be told. And they are stubborn. They will stand their ground. And they will be like the bull, and the horns will come down, and they will not move. I'm not moving from here. Back off. They're stubborn. And you can tell them, and it can be really, really difficult to get them to move. Of course, eventually they often will, but they are extremely stubborn. And there can be a lack of imagination. And this is a quality that's quite typical actually of earth signs, that the imaginative signs, mostly speaking, are going to be the air signs and the fire signs, which are kind of, sort of things happening, new ideas, new possibilities. The earth signs like stability, order, things to have a shape. Water signs will fill that shape, whatever it is. But we'll come on to them a bit later. And they have an inability to see the benefits of change. If you want to change things in your organisation or in your family or in any other way, and you're dealing with a Taurian, you need to be sure of your facts. You need to be able to lay it all out in a document that they can look at and read and comprehend and understand and say, he's made that point, And, just a simple argument saying, I think we should do this. No, that won't cut with Taurus. They want to see facts, and they want to see it laid out properly. So the image I would give you for Taurus is again quite a simple one. And I would put to you the picture of the evenly ploughed field with an ox cart, an ox plough pulling through the mud, turning over the furrow as he goes, and leaving beautiful tracks of straight lines where he's been. That is the image of Taurus. That is when Taurus is really happy. Now, the third sign that we have, again, completely different from the other two, is Gemini. We've all met Geminis. Geminis like to talk. They're the chatterboxes of the Zodiac. And they are always surrounded by people. They always have connections, one to another. They're the great networkers. They're the people that you go to when you want to hear the gossip. And the thing about Geminis and what characterises them is their versatility. They can turn their hands to anything. They might not do it as well. If you ask them to plough a field, okay, let's stretching them because they are not built for that sort of work. But they'll have a go. And they're very, very versatile people. And they have very quick wits. When you watch that program on television, Have I Got News for You? And you wonder, oh, wow, they're so quick in their repartee. They've pulled that little analogy out of the sky, and that quip that comes, it's all Gemini, that's Mercury, that's the kind of the agility of the front brain, which is what they excel in. And very often Gemini people are quite small. I don't know if you noticed that, but they're often quite small and wiry, little Mercury people. Not necessarily so, because there are other signs, other factors in the horoscope that which actually determine your size and your type physically, as much as your sun sign does. But you get the feeling. The Gemini is the kind of zippy little guy that can kind of get things happening, get things done, make connections between people. And so they make good salesmen. Yeah, the gift of the gab, He could sell he could sell an oil well to an Arab sheikh. He's got the gift of the gab. He's the guy who has the ability to charm as well. Aries people are always very charming. And so they can be confidence tricksters as well as being salesmen. And I've said here, communication. Their good qualities are their speed of mind. Yeah, Geminis have this agility, the speed of mind. So they can be very good at memorizing things, at things which require mental arithmetic, for example. Gemini, yeah, that's what it is. I bet Carol Vorderman's got a lot of Gemini in her chart. Again, if you're British, you'll understand who Carol Vorderman is. Used to be on TV doing something called Countdown, which required extraordinary mental arithmetic and agility. She's actually got a very high IQ and is a maths genius. They have an ability with words. Yeah, they always got the right words for the occasion, and they're quick to sense situations as well, which is the other thing you need if you're a salesman. You've got to be able to sense where your customer's at. Yeah, you've got to understand where that question that he's now criticising the thing you're trying to sell. Where's that coming from, really? It's not really about that he doesn't like the colour. What he's thinking about is that it's going to cost too much for what he's got budgeted. I've got to answer that question, not the one about the colour. This is the things that go through the mind of a salesman when he's working. And then he comes to the point where he knows that the customer is ready for closing. And he has to say to the customer, will you buy it? Very important to do that. And Geminis have a lot of charm about them, as I was saying. Yeah, they're nice to people. Everyone likes even a rogue. Yeah, even someone that you know is a rogue, you can like him because he's charming. You maybe need to watch where your wallet is and make sure you've still got your wristwatch on. But you put up with it because you like him. He's charming. And as I said earlier, they have versatility. But the things they've got to watch out for is, first of all, dishonesty. Because it's easy, if you've got that kind of quick mind and that agility with words and ability that way, it can be quite easy to be dishonest with people and not tell them the truth. So Geminis, there's always a danger that they can be very skillful liars. And you need to make sure that you're not doing that. They sometimes have an inability to get to the core. Now, what I mean with this is that you can fill your head with facts, have all sorts of different facts about, I don't know. Let's take the example of history. You might know loads of facts about history, but let's say the history of Egypt, ancient Egypt. You could tell me exactly when all the different dynasties were, different pharaohs within those dynasties, what they wore, what happened during their reigns, all of those kind of things. But the essence of ancient Egypt might elude the value that ran right through that civilization. What was really motivating and driving those people, you won't necessarily understand it just looking at all this stuff. This is, the great detectives on TV, the Hercule Poirots, and what's his name, the Mentalist we have these days. I enjoy watching the Simon Baker program. They have this ability. Simon Baker actually in The Mentalist is a very good example of a Gemini type. He's got that quickness of mind where he's picking up facts. He's also a bit of a trickster. He admits to it. He's a bit of a trickster and devious. But what he's got, which most Geminis need to develop as well, is the ability to see the bigger picture. And that's getting to the core of things. And that's what I'm getting at here. And there's a tendency to tell lies. Yeah, the artful dodger type. Yeah, it's easy. Oh, yeah, well, a little lie here will get us out of trouble. Political deceptions. Yeah, well, we've all seen politicians on television telling lies, and it's one reason why politics is held in such low regard is the fact that politicians these days, particularly major politicians, are in front of the TV camera all the time. So they've got to be good with the gab. They've got to have that ability, that quickness of mind, all those qualities which are very mercurial, not necessarily the qualities that you really want in a leader, Prime Minister or Chancellor of the Exchequer. You would probably actually want qualities which are coming from somewhere deeper, but that might not make them good on TV. This is one of the dilemmas we have in our time when we live in this TV age. So here we can see again is the situation where the Zodiac can actually give you good insights into understanding where things are going and where things are going wrong maybe within our culture and within our world. And the image I want to give you here for the Gemini type is the telephone operator with a switchboard, because this is at the basis of the whole thing, is this ability to make connections between things, ability, the fastness of mind that makes links here and there or knows people. Geminis are great networkers. The people who probably got the most friends on Facebook or on LinkedIn or who are twittering all the time, they're going to be people with a lot of Mercury, a lot of Gemini about them. And so that's the image I would give you, is the telephone operator with the switchboard. Now we come to the fourth sign of the Zodiac, which is Cancer. And again, it's completely different from the ones that went before it. Cancer's the first of the water signs, and the water signs have certain things in common. The first thing is that, like water, you know the way water fills a glass or fills a pot or fills whatever and takes up the shape of whatever it's in. So Cancers have that quality that they tend to fit in to wherever they are and occupy that space, whatever it might be. So they're not making the space, they are occupying it. Now, a very good example of this, of a Cancer, is Princess Diana. She was born into the family of an earl in the peerage, but not one of the major peerages. And yet she became the Princess of Wales, married the heir to the throne, kind of fitted into that lifestyle. But it was antagonistic, actually, to her inner nature, but she sort of fitted in there. Then she kind of went out of that space and became something different. She became kind of the people's princess. She became the rock star princess. And she lived the Hollywood lifestyle in many respects. Lots of friends in the film industry and in pop music. Loved restaurants, loved going out, loved the glitter, loved all of that. Many different lovers, etc. And yet we had this sense that we weren't seeing the actual woman herself. It was actually very hard to see her for what she really was in her essence. And this is, again, is typical of Cancers. Imagine a lake, and you want to look into the lake, but it has a surface that reflects back, the light. So you're looking at the lake, but actually what you're seeing is the clouds floating across the sky because you're getting that reflection coming back. And this is part of the problem that we have with trying to understand Cancers. But in essence, traditionally, Cancer is the home building sign. It's the fourth sign of the zodiac, and it rules the home. And Cancers have this sense that home is what's most important to them in their lives. That wherever home is, that is where they wish to be. And therefore, they have this quality of nurturing. It's the sign that's connected with motherhood. Cancers are most at their best at being a mother. And in fact, with Princess Diana, we saw that with the way she was raising her boys, that the role of motherhood is kind of the role that she felt most comfortable in and most happy with, looking after children and nurturing them. The other thing about Cancers is they have this desire and this willingness to collect things. In fact, they don't like to let things go even. They'll collect and hoard. And it doesn't have to be valuable things that they hoard. It can be all sorts of objects, curios, objets d'art, little mementos from places they've been, fridge magnets that they'll stick all over the fridge, postcards that people have sent them, birthday cards that they've never thrown away. And it's like a crab, The crabs gather things and hoard them, so they say, under their rock, wherever it is that they live. They have to have their home where they feel safe, and they want to surround themselves with things that remind them of their situation, who they are, where they've been. And their good qualities are, first and foremost, they have discretion usually. And I know Princess Diana, we can say, well, she wasn't that discreet when she was having that interview. But for a long time before that, she was, she was very discreet. Didn't let a word out about what was actually going on behind closed doors. And Cancers are like that. They keep things to themselves. They don't like to discuss themselves with the outside world very much. They don't like people seeing in to what's private. And they have very much this sense that there's a public world and there's a private world. And the interface is like that surface of the lake. The outside world can see the lake, but they're not going to look into it. And that's like it is with Cancers themselves. They don't like people looking into them, prying into their inner depths. But they have an empathy with people and with animals particularly. Usually Cancers are good with animals, and they like to have them around, whether it's cats or dogs or perhaps budgerigars or pet hamsters or squirrels even. It could be anything. They will collect and have these other beings around them that they can nurture and look after. So that again is a kind of a Cancerian trait. They like to care for the fragile. So if someone's been hurt, the whole thing with Lady Diana going out to Africa to meet the children, and people have been hurt, people have been damaged, lost a limb, walking on a mine or something. It's the Cancerian empathy for those who have suffered. It's, I feel your pain, I want to be there with you and help you. The Mother Teresa quality of Cancer as well that comes through. So what is it that Cancer needs to look out for? Well, first one is living in a dream. Cancers have this fantastic imagination and emotional life within that goes on, and they can tend to get caught up in their own dreams, their own dream world, and lose touch with what's actually going on around them and what's actually happening with other people. They can get into total fantasy situations. That's why they love cinema so much. Did I mention that? And they have this sense that the imaginative or the dream world or the inner world is every bit as important as the experiential world. And they can sort of sometimes get confused between what they dreamt and what actually happened. So this is something that they need to be careful about. Yes, have dreams. Yes, have fantasies, but don't get too trapped in those at the expense of your day-to-day reality. Another problem that they can have, or another thing they need to watch out for, is extreme nostalgia. Now, we all have a certain nostalgia for the past and for what happened to us in our past, or the things that we owned in the past, our teddy bear maybe, or whatever. But with cancers, it can get to be an extreme. The unwillingness to stop going on about a previous relationship, for instance, that maybe happened many, many years ago. Let it go, move on with the future, move on with the present. But cancers can have this problem that they won't let go of things. And it's because they're very nostalgic for times and situations and for people from the past. And there can be an over-reliance on feelings. Cancers work very much from how their instincts and they feel things, rather than from logically working things out with their head. They would say they're heart people rather than head people, but more than heart people, they're more gut people, actually. They have a gut instinct for things, a gut sense that so-and-so, instead of actually working things out mentally. Now, sometimes that works very well, they can have their gut instinct and the gut instinct proves correct. But there can be an over-reliance there on this kind of intuitive sensing things. But above all, the main thing that can be a problem for cancers is they can be extremely moody. Cancer's ruled by the moon, and you know how the moon goes. Sometimes it's a crescent moon and a half moon, a full moon, and back to a crescent, no moon. And that's kind of how cancers can be. They're very moody. When they're in a good mood and they're shining brightly like a full moon, and they're one person. When they're sort of crescent moon hidden away, they're sort of shied away into a corner, they're quite someone else, and they can be kind of very holding negative feelings about things for long periods of time. They mustn't do that. They've got to learn how to overcome that in themselves and to try to see things, as I've said, with all of these signs. It's all a question of balance and of seeing things from the other point of view. And because cancers are working so much from the feeling self and from the intuitive gut feeling about things, they can be blinded to the actuality of the situation. They can be holding grudges and bad tempers and so on when it's not called for. When actually the cause of the bad temper in the first place is now gone. Where they don't need to be still holding that grudge or that bad temper. It's moved away. So they need to overcome this moodiness and this sense of being always wanting to hide themselves away. That maybe sometimes they should show themselves more and people would like them more. and that is Leo, the fifth sign of the zodiac. And I don't think many people would need to be told too much about this to understand what Leos are like. If you've ever met one, you would know. The key words that go with Leo are grandeur. Leos like grandeur. They love opulence. They love glitter. They love nice fabrics and gold leaf on things and bright colours and beautiful things, beautiful people, to surround them. And that's another point. They like to be surrounded. They like an audience. Leos make very, very good actors, actually, because they love an audience. They love people to be listening to what they say. They make good orators for the same reason. They like to be talking and people listening to what they say. I'm a Leo and I love lecturing. I'll make no bones about it. I love standing in front of an audience lecturing. Always have done. In other ways, I can be quite a quiet, shy person. But put me on a stage and I love that whole kind of situation, that whole dialogue thing between myself and the audience and the feedback that you get from that. And that is very much in the nature of Leos. They love to be at the centre of attention. Another quality of Leos, a key word that goes with Leos, is loyalty. Leos do tend to be loyal to those who have been loyal to them. Leos tend to carry on their friendships right through life. I've got many friends that I've known all my life. And that's very typical of Leos, that they don't tend to discard people as they go. Of course, some will come and go. It's inevitable. But Leos will tend to still keep their childhood friends right through life. They have this loyalty. And it's the same when they're in situations of power, which Leos very often are in situations of power. They will like to surround themselves with those that they trust, those who are loyal, and they're loyal back to them. And if they show disloyalty, then Leos get very upset about it. Like Geminis, Leos have charm, but it's a different kind of charm from the Gemini. The Gemini charm is kind of the quick wit, the glibness, of repartee. Yeah, he's quite a character, isn't he? Leo's charm is much more this sort of warmth that they radiate. And they like it reciprocated, I should say. But I'll come to that in a minute. So what are the good qualities of Leo? Well, they have an ability at team building. And this is very important, actually, in any situation, in any company, in any government, in all of these areas of life. If you try and do it on your own, 9 times out of 10, you won't really get very far. You get much further if you can build a team and get the team to work together for the common good. Successful kings. Now, when we look back on our history, and British, we love our history, look at people like Henry V. Henry V, great man. You could say, well, he's an Aries type, rushing out, leading the battle. But he also has this Leo quality where he enthuses his troops once more onto the breach, dear friends, and the whole thing of getting loyalty from those around you so that you can achieve. And great leaders do that. They don't just lead from the front and rush in and everybody else is hanging behind and then they end up being caught. No, they build a team. They get people to be loyal to them, and then they can achieve what they wish to do. So it's actually the opposite of many so-called entrepreneurial types who rush forwards with a fresh scheme or idea, and the idea is that I'm going to make all the money, you're just going to do the donkey work, and I'm going to get rich. That never works, or seldom works, long term. Long term, it's much better to build a team and to get the team to work with you and for you and to your mutual benefit. The other qualities about Leo is, first of all, they have high ideals usually. Most Leos are, generally speaking, quite honourable people. It might not be exactly what you would or I would necessarily call what we would honour, but it's what they honour. And it matters very much to them what they honour. So they tend to be quite honourable people, and that matters to them. They are creative. Yes, Leo is a creative sign. It's a sign that supposedly rules over children, for one thing. But they are flamboyant. Leos love flamboyance. They love a bit of colour. They would love to have a nice car in the drive. They love to live in a mansion with lions on the gateposts and a big gold door knocker. It's very, very Leo to want those things, even if they haven't got them. But there are things they need to watch out for. And the first one is laziness. It's one thing to be the puppet master and to get other people doing the work and working out the course and being the managing director or the chairman of the board and getting the board to angle in the right way. There's another thing to be so laid back and lazy that nothing ever gets done. And that's always a danger for Leos, because they do have an aspect of them which likes the easy life. So they've got to be a bit more motivated, most of them. A bit of the Aries can really work well here, or a bit of the Taurus to keep things moving. Leos can be terrible show-offs. They like to boast about their achievements. And conversely, they love flattery. This is one of the great downfalls of Leos right through the ages, is the flattering words that can catch their attention. If they're not careful, they can be carried away by that, and they can be made use of by unscrupulous people that wish to use them for whatever purpose, simply by using a bit of flattery, telling them how wonderful they are, how great they are, how fantastic what they've achieved is, etc., etc. So Leos need to be on their guard about their vulnerability to flattery. Pride is another thing that Leos can suffer from. Sometimes you've got to swallow your pride and accept situations and things which are not of your choosing, and be humble enough to go and say sorry, or to admit that you can't do whatever it is that you would like to do. That you mustn't be proud about things. You mustn't allow your sense of honour or authority or dignity or whatever you want to put on it to morph into just pride and arrogance, because those are dangerous things for Leos and can really upset other people greatly and bring about enmities that needn't be there otherwise. That if you would only acknowledge other people's skills, abilities, achievements, as well as your own, then they would be far more receptive. So the image I would give you for Leo is a very simple one, really, which is the king on his throne surrounded by courtiers. If you hold that image in your mind, then you understand exactly what I'm saying about Leo, that it's one thing to be the king, and it's one thing to be surrounded by your courtiers, telling you how wonderful you are and how your ancestry is great and, your kingdom is the best in the world, etc., etc. But actually what you need to be doing is listening as well to what those courtiers have to say about what's wrong, what needs doing, what mistakes you're making, how things go on. And that's actually what a government or a cabinet government should be about. Yes, the king takes decisions. in a monarchy anyway, theoretically. But he should be listening to his ministers as well and acting in accordance with good advice. So that brings us to the next sign in our little cycle through the signs of the zodiac, and that's Virgo, the Virgin in the sky, which actually in ancient times wasn't. It's not like it's the Virgin Mary. Let me get this clear. Virgo means a girl in Latin, and the Virgo was the Virgin of the Golden Age, and connected with corn and prosperity and fertility. But the things about Virgo is that they have a love, again, of order, and they are great at attention to detail, and they're systematic. So these are the qualities that you'll see usually manifesting with Virgo people, that they are very organized, they are systematic about what they do, and they pay attention to detail. Virgos, for example, should make, I don't say they always do, but they should make very good computer programmers. If you've been a computer programmer, and I have before, I'm not very good at it, I have to admit, it requires a great deal of organization and attention to detail to do it effectively. Yes, you can know what you're setting out to do, but if you're writing a load of code, for example, every full stop, how every word is spelled, has to be exactly right. If it's not right, the program won't work, or it'll have bugs, or it'll do wrong things. So Virgos are like that. They can be really meticulous within the zodiac. They're also people that have connections with health and healing. And I'll come to that in a second. Now, the good qualities of Virgo are their organizing skill. Yeah? They're the people that will set up all those systems that other people maybe say, oh, there's too much bureaucracy going on here. Well, someone had to develop the bureaucracy, and it would be the Virgos who will have worked it all out, down to the last docket, the last report that has to be filled in, the last tick box. That's all Virgo. They're good with numeracy. Virgos make good bank clerks. They're good at adding up columns of figures, getting the books to balance. Good accountants for that reason. They have good memories usually. And again, it ties in with this whole thing with sort of attention to detail. They'll remember the facts, they'll remember the figures, they'll remember situations in the past. And they'll be, because that's their base data that they're analysing, that they're looking at. And they have dexterity. You know, to be a good typist, you've got to have quick fingers. To be a violinist, you've got to be able to put your fingers in the right places at the right time. All that requires dexterity. Bowling a cricket ball, batting, all of these things, catching things. You'll find that Virgos, if something drops off a shelf, they'll be the one that will catch it, with one hand. They won't have to think about it, just like that. Whereas Taurus will be falling flat on their face if they try to do that. So Virgos don't tend to have accidents. They're nimble enough to be able to avoid things, to get round things. But they also have things that they've got to look out for, haven't all the signs? And the first and foremost criticism of Virgo you can make is that they are overly critical of others. Virgos are forever analysing. They're forever analysing other people's points. They meet someone and immediately working out exactly what's wrong with them. And they can be very sharp-tongued and critical as well. The critical Virgo is very often the words that go with this sign. And they have to learn how to, I can't say they lose that, they never will, because it's part of their nature. But they need to learn how to hold their tongue. When's the right time to be able to be voicing these criticisms, which they'll have noticed, but when's the right time to hold back and not to say, well, I think that skirt doesn't go with that top, or, well, you could have done that better, couldn't you? Or, why didn't you do that? It was so simple to do. If you're always nagging, criticising, picking holes in other people, then they're not going to love you, they're not going to respect you, they're not going to like you, and they're going to keep away. And so that's one of the things that Virgos have to learn in life, is to hold back on the criticisms, but also to understand or to take note when other people are critical of them. I don't think they have much problem with that usually, because they're hypercritical of themselves as well. But a good example is in Britain, is we have this TV program called Strictly Come Dancing. And there's one of the judges on the panel. They have a panel of 4 judges. And the other judges will be holding up, will be saying, yes, that was really well done. So good to see how you're progressing. That's great. I really thought that those steps you did in the quick step was fantastic. And they'll be saying, yeah, well, that was such a good effort. But this one guy who'll say, right, well, in the first part, you didn't get the steps right for that first bit, and the lift wasn't very good, and the back wasn't straight. You should have been tipping your head back a bit further. And usually we'll end up giving them the lowest marks of the 4 judges. Virgo, I don't know if he is a Virgo himself, but that is the Virgo attitude. That, well, they would want to know, they would want to be corrected. They'd want to do it better next time, so if I don't correct them and tell them what's wrong, how are they going to know? Well, sometimes people don't want to be told. They know already. They can be neurotic obsessives. Virgos live on their nerves. So all those people that wash their hands all the time and constantly worried about germs and have to seal off whole rooms that have been cleaned because they don't want anyone to do, to get it dirty. That's very Virgo. Virgos are hygiene conscious people, very obsessed with the risk from germs of catching things from someone else, plagues that might be going to go through, toilet seats that someone else has sat on that they might catch something nasty from. This is all very Virgo, this kind of anxiety and neurosis. And this ties in with something else. They have an anxiety about the unknown. And this ties in with something else. The hypochondria. It follows, that if you're worried about that you might catch something off the toilet seat, or, that somebody hasn't washed their hands when they shook hands with you, or that, the lift button that you press might have someone's cold germs on it, you're going to be a hypochondriac, because you're going to be surrounded by all this all the time anyway. We all are. So Virgos tend to be very concerned about their health, about their bowel movements, about, what's happening in their stomachs and their inside, doctor, can you give me something for this, that, or the other? So they can be hypochondriacs, and that can be a major problem to them. But at the same time, they probably are a doctor themselves anyway, because this is a sign that really often is appropriate for doctors to have this kind of meticulousness to detail, this concern about hygiene and germs and the workings of the human body. All goes very well with medicine, so many Virgos will probably be drawn to that profession anyway. And so the image I would give of Virgo is the doctor in a busy surgery. So think about that. There's the surgery there, the doctor's behind his desk, people are coming to him with their ailments. He's got to diagnose them, he's got to understand, he's got to measure things like the heartbeat, pulse rate, look at their tongue, etc. And then he's got to make a diagnosis and prescribe. That's very much the nature of Virgo. Virgo, the caring, humanitarian who looks after people's ailments but is also highly critical and can see what's going wrong. And this brings us to the next sign, which is Libra, the scales. And the key words for this sign are balanced, graceful, and justice. You think about it, the scales, it's the time when the sun is going to the autumn equinox, and the shift is between going from summer into autumn. So we have within nature itself the sense of a changing mood, changing seasons, moving from one thing into another. And the qualities that go with this, with Libran people, is that they tend to see things and want to keep things balanced all the time. So they will hear an argument, but automatically they'll be thinking, yes, but what's the other side of the story? What's the other guy got to say? You get this actually when you're watching political debates on television or listening to them on the radio. They never let anyone actually speak their opinion without having someone else posing the opposite. Not usually anyway. So you have this sense of all the time trying to measure things, trying to hear both sides of the story before reaching any kind of decision. So Libra itself is very closely connected with the idea of justice and the justice system which we have, which can either be a magistrate sitting on his bench, hearing both sides of the argument and reaching a decision, or, more serious cases, you have a jury, 12 people. Theoretically, the jury ought to be composed of a person from each sign. There should be an Aries, a Taurus, a Gemini, etc., all the way around. 12 people, 12 signs, so that you had a fully rounded view taken from the whole spectrum of human types, of the different windows that we look out through. But I'm sure that never happens in practice. But that still, the principle is there, and it's the idea that we wish to see things in a balanced way. So the good qualities that go with Librans is they very frequently have some kind of artistic ability, because the whole nature of art, of artistry, is the sense of being able to produce balance within things. Yes, I know that you can have kind of anti-art, which is makes a virtue out of creating things which are ugly. But most art, certainly historically most art, was always aiming to be beautiful. And the idea was to create beauty within the moment. And that is also something that's very Libran, because mostly beauty ties in with concepts of symmetry. That if you look at what makes a face beautiful, is very often that there's a very good symmetry between the two sides of the face. You draw a line down the middle. You can actually do this. Take a photograph of someone, photograph head on, and blot out one side of it, and photocopy it, and reverse that image and stick the two images together. So you've got, instead of two sides of the face, you've got one side repeated, but with it reversed. And do the same with the other side. And you'll usually see that the two images that you get are really quite different. That the left side of the face is really rather different from the right. But if you take a top model, someone who's noted for their extreme beauty, and do that, you'll see much less of a difference. That they have a good symmetry between the two sides of the face. They like things which are harmonious. And what do we mean by harmonious? Two things don't have to be actually exactly alike to fit well together. For example, in music, you can play a note, you can play the third and you play the fifth, play them together and you get a chord which is harmonious. The sounds blend well together. So Librans are looking to see situations that they can blend things better together. So for that reason, they make very good hosts or hostesses who seek to put people together in harmonious situations. They try and balance them up one with another, sitting around a table or as attendees to a conference or a party. Librans are good at that sort of thing, and they're also very good at such concepts as feng shui. The idea that a room should be, or a house, should be organized according to certain principles: fire, earth, air, and water, and metal, I think, in the Oriental system. That's not just Oriental. The Romans used to practice something very similar. They didn't call it feng shui, but they certainly used to practice what they called eurythmy, which was, again, this idea of harmony, of putting things in the right place, in the right order, the right colours, etc. So I would say that Librans would be very good at doing interior design work, for example, or other situations that require a kind of internal knowledge of feng shui, not something you have to think about and organise, but something that comes naturally. Now, what they have to watch out for, these balanced, harmonious people, is first of all indecisiveness. Yeah, it can be the situation where, well, I like that, but I also like this, and then of course there's this, and you can end up spending all day not being able to decide which is right, which is wrong, which is good, which is bad, which is the right colour, which is appropriate, etc. It can make you very indecisive, and sometimes you need to take a decision and cut down the line, and Librans can find that quite difficult, so they need to learn how to take decisions, to be decisive. So Librans can also be excessively cautious because of this same thing. Better not change it. Okay, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Yeah, it is a problem, but it could be worse. So they do need to learn how to take control of things, to make change, to take decisions, and to not be overly cautious about the situations that they find themselves in. And all of this, taken together, this indecisiveness and caution and desire for balance and harmony, etc., can all lead to another aspect with them, which is depression. Librans can be very prone to depression for just these reasons, that they can't figure it out. And actually what happens when you are depressed is your brain goes inwards, and maybe you'll go to bed even, go and sleep on it. And then your unconscious mind can get to work on the situation and find a new avenue of approach. So that can be what happens with Librans, that they become depressed because they're looking inwards for a solution to taking the decision that they can't quite see from what's around them. So the image I've taken for Libra is, if you imagine a building with a very exact portico in the front. A portico is an entranceway, and imagine with Corinthian pillars rising up to a pediment, and the whole thing being absolutely balanced and ordered. So maybe 3 columns here and 3 columns here. The angle of that is exactly right for the angle of that. The extent of the building on the right, on the left and the right is exactly matched and balanced. So imagine this totally balanced building, and then a figure of justice sitting on the top. Justice, the figure that holds the balances in one hand, that's blindfolded and holds a sword in the other. Blindfolded justice standing on top of this totally balanced building. take that as the image for Libra. Which neatly brings us to the next sign of the zodiac, which is Scorpio. Ah, Scorpio. I know what you're thinking. Sexy Scorpio. Everybody knows, if they don't know anything else about astrology, they know that Scorpio is connected with sex in some way. They don't know how, but they suspect it's something dirty. Well, maybe it is sometimes, I don't know. But Scorpio is actually much more to it than that. And the key notes that go with Scorpio is, first of all, sensuality. Scorpios are sensual people. They are people that are very much turned on by the whole, not just sex itself, but the whole concept of it. Every kind of fetish, every kind of aspect that's connected has a kind of fascination for Scorpio in a way that maybe it doesn't for many other signs. But the other words that go with Scorpio are, first of all, sacrifice. Now that might sound strange things to say for these sensualist Scorpios that we're talking about. But Scorpio, actually, one of the reasons why they can be so sex-obsessed is because they're yearning. They're yearning for something, and they're looking for it through the avenue of probably the one thing in our lives that connects us to something transcendent. For most people, the only time they actually really feel something transcendent is at the moment of orgasm, when they lose themselves just for a moment in the union with someone else. And taken to extreme, that can be an escape. But what Scorpio is really looking for is full transcendence of themselves. And that actually goes very deep indeed. It's concerned with the whole idea of the phoenix, the idea of death and rebirth. Scorpio is also connected with death. Probably heard that one as well. But it's not just any kind of death, not goths necessarily. It's the idea of sacrificing self to give birth to the higher self. And that is something that it is difficult to even talk about, let alone understand. But I think most Scorpios would know what I'm talking about. And that gives Scorpios also a great fascination with the occult. And that can be everything from kind of witchiness and Aleister Crowley and dancing around naked around a bonfire to the whole kind of sense of wanting to understand the hidden world, the hidden meaning of things, the higher self, the soul, the nature of the soul, the transcendence to reaching God. All of that is connected with Scorpio and its coarser, lower manifestations to its most sublime, which is the phoenix. So the good qualities to do with Scorpio is, first of all, they are people who do understand at a very deep level the need for some kind of self-sacrifice. Now, we all need to do this at times. We all have to sacrifice things for greater benefits. Parents have to make sacrifices all the time for their children. People have to make sacrifices to help others at times of crisis, times of difficulty. We all know that. The situation of the soldier who takes a decision. He goes out. He has to go out with his gun and take, risk his own life to save his comrades. If he doesn't do it, then they're all dead. It can be many, many forms, this idea of self-sacrifice. It's not all about Mother Teresa in the slums of Calcutta. There's many different aspects to this whole idea of sacrifice. But above all, it's about sacrificing potential in this world for possible benefits in some other world. And that's why it's connected with the occult, which is all about actually self-transformation. The idea that man, as he is just a grub. Yeah, think of this body as being like the body of a caterpillar. What is the purpose of a caterpillar? It can go around all the time eating cabbage leaves and getting fatter and fatter. And then it can be picked up by a bird and swallowed, and that's it. Or the caterpillar can hoist itself up onto a leaf and spin a cocoon, and in the fullness of time emerge from that cocoon as a beautiful butterfly. This is all connected with the whole idea of Scorpio, of needing to die to one level to be born into the next, of transcendence. So this actually can give Scorpio a great deal of strength. Scorpio, like Aries, is ruled by Mars. So there can be strength of overcoming adversity. There's a kind of depth and a resilience with Scorpio that other signs can find quite unnerving at times. The Scorpio gaze is quite something else. If you ever try and outstare a Scorpio, don't, because they have this powerful gaze that can go right through you, because they're so focused and so determined in everything that they do, and they have this resilience about them. But there are things that they need to watch out for as well. All the signs do. And the first thing that they need to watch out for is vindictiveness. They say about Scorpio that Scorpios will never forgive and they'll never forget. That, you know, you've heard the saying, revenge is best served cold. That's a Scorpio saying. Scorpio will wait 10 years to get their revenge if someone crosses them. Well, Scorpio needs to learn that that's not always the best thing to do anyway. Yeah, revenge can give you some satisfaction, maybe, but why bother? It's not always, if you're hanging on to this grievance that needs revenge all the 10 years, then it's doing you damage as well as any possible damage you might do on the other party later on. It's much better to forgive. It's much better to let things go and to forget. And that's something that Scorpio needs to learn if it's to make that transcendent leap to become the phoenix. The second thing that Scorpios have to watch out for is perversion. Now, I know I was talking about, the dancing around the bonfire naked and the fascination with sex. But all of those things, what they can be, if not controlled, is a means of focusing higher energies into lower manifestations. And that can give a thrill. There's no doubt about it. It can give a thrill. But that thrill is momentary and it costs. It costs greatly at a higher level. So Scorpio needs to learn not to do that, not to be connected with attitudes and behaviors which are going to cause damage to the soul. And Scorpio should know that they've got a soul. They do know, and don't always admit it, but they do know it. And another thing that ties in with that is the concept of cruelty. Most people don't have it in them to be really cruel. Yes, we say, oh, he was cruel. But to be really cruel is a cold-blooded business. How would you possibly push a burning hot iron into somebody else? How would you tear out their fingernails, their toenails? How would you blind them with a hot pin? These are things that most of us would not. Not only would we not want to do it, but we couldn't. We just would feel revulsion at the thought. Unfortunately for Scorpio, that's not usually the case, and they have got a capacity for cruelty that other signs have not. So they need to learn how to control that, because it's going to damage them too. So there's a logic to this as well, that don't do it, because you're going to get that what you do to others will come back to you eventually. So don't do anything horrible, otherwise something horrible might well come back to you, if not in this life, in another one. And self-destruction is the other thing that goes in with that. So Scorpios are so aware of the situations that they find themselves in. They're so conscious of the dark side or the abyss that yawns, that they can try to run away from that through drugs or alcoholism or some other means of distraction like that, just to put it off. But that itself can be a danger to them and destroy them. So they need to be very aware and controlled over how they approach things like sort of illegal drugs, illegal highs, because every illegal high will be accompanied by an illegal low as well. Your body will not give you energy for nothing. If you have that energy to experience that ecstasy, or that moment of ecstasy, that energy's had to come from somewhere. It's come from the accumulators inside you. And those accumulators are therefore going to feel emptied by that experience. It's like blowing all your money on a binge. You're going to be broke afterwards. So Scorpios need to learn to control that, not to go out on the binge, not to start taking loads of drugs to get that release, that momentary release. What they need to do is to work on how they're going to develop their higher self and transcend to become the phoenix. And they will do that through self-sacrifice of one sort or another. And before I leave that, I should give you the image that I have for Scorpio. And the image I give you is James Bond in a wetsuit armed with a knife. You all know who James Bond is, the spy, the MI5 or MI6 agent. What's he going to do? What's he going to use that knife for? Is he going to look for vengeance? Is he going to slit a throat unnecessarily? Is he looking to do good? Is he giving service? Is he sacrificing himself? These are the images that go with Scorpio. Which brings us to the next sign, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius, half man, half horse, the archer, the centaur archer. The words that go with Sagittarius are, first of all, direct. Yeah, Sagittarians are very direct people, and that's why I'm giving it to you very directly now. That arrow, when it's fired, will go straight to that target. The Sagittarius will say things to you which are desperately cutting at times, but they are absolutely bang on. They'll say to you, well, that actually doesn't suit you at all, yeah? Or, yeah, I don't think he does love you. Or they'll tell you the truth. And Sagittarius is very much a truth-saying sign. They're very honest people on the whole. Of course, there are going to be people who aren't. And they're the opposite sign to Gemini. Gemini, yeah, you've got this sort of mercurial character of dancing in the air and finding and connecting and so on. Sagittarius is quite different. It's sort of, that's how it is. They're to the point. They're high-minded people. Sagittarians have very high ideals, usually. And they're generous. Sagittarians are usually people who are very generous towards others, generous with their goodwill, generous financially, generous in other ways. They're strong-willed. Yeah, it's hard to turn a Sagittarius away. It's not just the stubbornness, like a Taurian stubbornness, of wanting to keep things as they are. It comes from the will. And Sagittarius makes decisions, and they're very willful. Even as children, you find that they're very willful people. And their good qualities are, first and foremost, their honesty. Sagittarians are very honest, and they will tell you, if you ask them their opinion, they will tell you in no uncertain terms. You might wish you hadn't asked them, but they will tell you, and it will be an honest opinion. If they think that you need to do this, that, or the other, they'll tell you. They're uncompromising. That Sagittarians really hate making compromises. They hate being tied in or tied down or barriers put around them. They don't like restraints at all of any nature. They will do things, but they'll do it because that's what they've said they will. As I said, they're willful. They don't want to be compelled against their will to do things. So with the Sagittarius, the carrot always works far better than the whip. Far better. Sagittarius have to have their freedom and their chance to do things their way. They won't always find themselves in situations where that's possible, and that can cause them a great deal of distress and suffering. But in general, they like to have things their own way and to do things the way that is not constricting their freedom. Most Sagittarians are quite athletic. Many of them will be involved in competitive sports, but even those who aren't will be quite strong and athletic in their own way. And it might come out in forms that you don't expect, like, they work very hard in the garden, for instance. They seem to have a lot of energy to get on and do things. That's because the nature of Sagittarius is a fire sign, and it's a mutable fire sign. And it does give them the energy to get on and do things. Sagittarians are charitable people. As I said before, they're generous, and therefore they tend to support charities, whether it's Oxfam or Feed the Children or whatever. They will have usually one or more charities, and there are people who will go out and will shake tins in the street asking for people to contribute. And they're logical thinkers. They reach their deductions and they will tell you exactly what's right. So they actually make very good High Court judges. Let's not blanket all Sagittarians together. Of course, very many won't. But the Sagittarius quality, which other signs might have, you might have it because of another planet in Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising or some other means, make very good judges. And the reason that there's a difference between a judge and a barrister is that the judge has to take the decision at the end of the day. Yes, of course, the collective decision of a jury decides if someone's innocent or guilty, but then the judge takes the decision of what to do in terms of giving out the punishment. In the old days, you might put his black cap on and say, take him out and hang him. Not allowed to do that anymore, but he can determine the length of a sentence and where it's to be done, and an appeal court judge can decide if that's to be shortened. He decides what is to happen in the law court. And Sagittarians are like that. They decide things. They're good at taking decisions. So what do they need to watch out for? Well, I would say first and foremost, tactlessness. There are times when you can tell people things. There are other times when you have to not tell them because you'll hurt their feelings. That's what we call being tactless. So it's not something that comes naturally always to a Sagittarian, but they need to learn tact, learn how to deliver the message in the way that doesn't hurt the person that they're trying to help. They can have a bullying attitude, some Sagittarians anyway, because they're so strong-willed themselves. If they come across someone else who's not that strong-willed, they can have a tendency to bully them. And unlike the Librans that we were looking at earlier, they do have a difficulty in seeing someone else's point of view. Not always, but they can do. Because they've reached their decision, You try to argue them out of that, it'd be quite difficult. So they can be, a bit one-sided. And the image I want to give you for Sagittarius is a very simple one, which you all know and you all recognise immediately. And it's Robin Hood. Yes, Robin Hood. Robin of Locksley with his bow and arrow. He is exactly Sagittarius. He could be nothing else but Sagittarius. Stealing from the rich to pay the poor. Taking decisions all the time. Trying to bring justice about in the world. Athletic, able, Robin Hood. Now we're gradually coming to the end of our little tour through the Zodiac, and we come to the fourth of the cardinal signs, which is Capricorn. Capricorn is usually shown as a sea goat. Capricorn means the horn of the goat. And it's usually shown as a goat, or as I say, a sea goat, has a fish tail quite often, galloping up the side of a cliff. So the key words that go with Capricorn is, first of all, they're ambitious. Yeah, Capricorn people don't want to stay where they are. They want to go higher. They're ambitious. They look around them and they see, there's a whole mountain to climb here. I don't have to stay at this level. Yeah, I might be born working class, but I'm going to get up there in the middle class. Or I might be born middle class. I'm going to reach up there into the millionaire category. Multi-millionaire. Yeah, they're ambitious. And they'll look for avenues that ambition can be fulfilled. They're serious people usually. The pure Capricorn because they have goals in life, they tend not to be very humorous. They're ruled by Saturn. Saturn's a very serious planet, heavy going, and so the Capricornian sense is, look, there's no time for frivolity. Yeah, if we're going to get up there, then I've got to do all this groundwork down here first. It can mean education. It can mean getting the right job, making sure you get the right promotions at the right time, even launching your own business at the right time, your own .com or whatever. You've got to get there. They're thoughtful. They don't rush out, and do things impulsively like Aries. They think about it. They're cautious. You bet they're cautious. And they're frugal. They don't go out and waste money, waste their situation, because they know they're going to need it in the future. They're busy building their base that they're going to climb up from. So they have good qualities. Their good qualities, first of all, they're dignified. Capricorns don't like to be seen being stupid. Yeah, I know there are Capricorns who've done stupid things. There are Capricorns that will wear clown outfits. There are Capricorns that do all kind of undignified things. But I'm talking about the nature of the sign, not all the other things that can confuse that picture. Capricorns are dignified because they understand the higher up the tree you want to go, the more dignity matters. Your reputation matters. So you've got to be cautious about your reputation and not allow it to be taken from you. Therefore, you've got to be dignified. They're upwardly mobile. Well, I said that earlier. So there would be the little boy that works very hard and gets himself to grammar school, gets himself straight A's, goes to Oxbridge, gets himself a good first degree, goes into the law, goes into banking, goes into commerce, whatever, ends up as a millionaire. That's the classic Capricornian approach. They're frugal, I said that before, and they're cautious. They don't do things, they don't behave stupidly, or they try not to. They're cautious. Cautious about investments. If you go up to them and you say, look, this guy from Nigeria has sort of written to me and he's told me that he's got access to this huge fund. All I got to do is send out £1,000 and he'll mail it to my bank account. They will know this is a scam, right? A, you're going to lose £1,000. B, he's probably, once he's got your account details, he's probably going to empty your account as well. Capricorn would never fall for that. Now, there are, unfortunately, as with all signs, there are things they have to watch out for. First of all, there's meanness. Yes, I was saying about how Sagittarius was generous. Well, Capricorn has a reputation for meanness. Scrooge comes to mind. Yeah, Scrooge, he's built his empire himself. Sweat of his brow. He's worked hard all his life to build his empire. Why should he throw away money, on some luckless boy that's a cripple, buy him a turkey? Why should he do that? He's worked hard for it. So there can be a meanness there. They can be accused of gold digging, particularly females. The idea that they want to go up, so what the quickest way to go up is to find a rich man, rich husband, latch onto him. There can be insincerity, because if you're going to do that, then there's going to be all sorts of conflicts and contradictions. You're going to have to put up with that, so there can be an insincerity. And a cold-heartedness that goes with that. If you're going to marry for wealth rather than love, that's cold-hearted calculation. And is that really how you want to be? Something that Capricorns need to think about more than others. Avarice. Money's not everything. You don't always, can't buy you everything. Can't buy you love, as the Beatles used to sing. Yeah, it can buy you a good time. It can buy you the possibility of greater comfort. You can fly first class instead of going cabin class. You're not going to be facing a lot of life's problems. It'll be a lot easier that if you've got money than if you haven't. But it's not everything in life. Actually, a lot more is to do with what you create yourself. And that's something that Capricorns need to learn. So I've got an image for you here that goes with Capricorn. And that is a Florentine banker. It's a banker from Florence at its peak in the 16th century, discussing business. So a Florentine banker, someone like one of the de Medicis, Lorenzo de Medici, dressed in some lovely robes with a hat, and he's counting out his money and he's doing business. That's the image that goes with Capricorn. It's not the king, he's the banker. And he's the self-made man or self-made woman that's on their way up. That's the image that goes with Capricorn. And that brings us again to a completely different sign, Aquarius. Oh, don't we love Aquarius? This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Remember that? Hair? I haven't got much now, but in those days I did have long hair. And imagine, the whole freedom, the free love, the drugs, the escape, the excitement of it all. It was all so Aquarian. Actually, the 1960s were really very, very Aquarian. If you want to understand Aquarius, look at the 1960s. The key words that go with it, first of all, revolutionary. All those Che Guevara shirts, the guys out there waving banners, demonstrations, ban the bomb. That's all Aquarius moving a whole generation. Avant-garde. Let's change everything. Let's pull down the old. We're bringing in a new order to things. It's revolution. We don't want these old fogies telling us what to do. We're going to create a new planet, a new society based on love, peace, tripping out, and the idea of progressive politics. Yeah, we're going to level everything. We're going to take from the rich and give to the poor. We're going to make everyone out of the poverty trap. We're going to build this new world where everyone's equal, everyone's doing the right thing. So those are the words that go with Aquarius, but the good qualities are they're inventive. Yeah, Aquarians are inventive. They're inventive of the New Age. The whole idea of the New Age is actually Aquarius. The idea of, and it goes into all sorts of other areas too. Someone had to invent the wireless. Someone had to invent the internet. Someone had to invent computers. Someone invented the telephone, the electric light. Everything has to be invented. And the whole Aquarius thing is developing inventions that use energy in different ways. No use having a television set if you haven't got any electricity. You won't get anything. You've also got to have a radio or TV signal coming in. No TV signal, whether it's coming through an aerial or through the internet or whatever. No picture, no sound, no nothing. So it's all connected with the idea of flows and transformations of energy. Is very much linked in with Aquarius. And Aquarians are particularly attuned to that and attuned to the understanding of transformations of energy and how everything that works, everything that moves is dependent on energy. And most of all about mental energy. How your whole experience of the world around you is connected with energy flows inside your brain. The idea you can take a tab of LSD, saying, wow, seeing everything, hearing the flowers sing. That is very Aquarius, the wanting to experiment with that difference in consciousness. As I said before, they're egalitarian. Aquarians can't see the point of kings and queens. They can't see the point of fancy uniforms or any kind of hierarchies. We're all equal, man. We're all the same. Yeah, we all have to eat, we all crap. We're all the same. That's the Aquarius mantra. They don't have much feeling for the sense that hierarchies might matter to other people in a way they don't to themselves. They're idealistic. Well, isn't what I'm saying idealistic? Love, peace, prosperity for everyone, all the good things in life. Well, we were lucky in the 1960s in a way that because of the inventions which had happened and the peace after the Second World War and the fact that we were living in sort of relatively wealthy countries, in the West anyway, we could have a lot. Like rich kids who were spoilt rotten. And so we were able to get away with things that it's fast becoming clear is not going to be got away with for very much longer. And they're well-meaning. Yeah, Aquarius are lovely people. Well-meaning. Bit bonkers at times, but well-meaning. But there are, again, things they need to watch out for. First of all is dissolution. If you're going to do all that stuff, playing around with things, being revolutionaries, changing things, throwing things over, there's a fine line between that and just becoming a dissolute rebel or reprobate. There's a fine line between the bold revolutionary in his youth and the jaded, still revolutionary in his middle age who's not growing up. There's another thing they need to watch out for is cowardice. That might sound odd. You think, well, if they're being revolutionary, surely that's really brave. But there is a cowardice involved as well in wanting to take from others instead of creating yourself, in wanting to hide behind a crowd, a mass movement, and not stand up to protect that which is valuable. But it's very easy to smash things down. Terribly easy. It's much harder to build them. I won't say anyone, but you fly a plane into the Twin Towers and they come crashing down. It takes one flight to do that. But to build something like that, to build a structure, to build a civilization, takes an enormous amount of effort from a lot of people over a long period of time. So this is something that revolutionaries throughout the ages have failed to appreciate. It's one thing to pull the king off his throne, to disband the court, to chop off heads. It's quite something else to put a civilization in its place. And very often what happens when you chop heads off at the top is you end up with a period of chaos. Your revolution is followed by a tyranny of bloodshed. Selfishness. Aquarians can be remarkably selfish people because they don't want to hear anybody else's opinion because they think they're right. They believe they're right. They know they're right. It must be self-evident. It's much better to live in love and peace and everyone to be equal. Then they can't see that maybe what they're trying to get is not actually possible within this world, that compromises have to be made. Sometimes you have to make the best of what you've got because it's better than the chaos if you haven't got it. There can be self-delusion involved, both with themselves and with other people and situations. They can think that everybody else in that crowd around them actually shares their idealism. But a lot of those people are there just for the fun of it. Or the boys are there because there are easy girls there. Or the girls are there because there's lots of nice boys around. There's lots of reasons why people gather in a crowd and wave placards, and not all of those are connected with the high ideals or idealism of Aquarius. And lastly, there can be a lack of focus. If you're really going to be effective in this world, then you've got to be quite focused about what you want to do. You can't do everything. Nobody can do everything. You need to get a grasp and get a grip on what your own skill sets are, and not just talking about, I'm creative. Well, in what way are you creative? Are you musical? Are you artistic? Are you good with words? Yeah? Are you a good builder, electrician, plumber? What way are you creative? There's a need to understand oneself and to get a focus and get a grip. If you don't do that, then can end up going nowhere. So I've got another image here that goes with Aquarius, and you're going to laugh at this one. The image I have is the wealthy rock superstar visiting a slum. Imagine the wealthy rock superstar. In the 60s, he was big, he was calling for revolution. Yeah, he managed to make a bit of bread. And now he's visiting a slum. He doesn't want to go back to that slum, but he wants to feel comfortable in himself that he's doing something. I'll leave that image with you. And then finally we come to the last sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces, the two fish. And it's the last of our water signs. And this is in many ways, certainly for me, the hardest sign of all to comprehend and understand. And I think many Pisceans find it hard to understand as well. I've known a lot of Pisces in my time, and all of them are different. All of them have certain kind of, how can I put it, quality that is recognizable, but difficult to put into words. Now I'm going to throw a few key words here. First of all, kind-hearted. Most Pisceans that I've met are at base kind-hearted people. They would like to see things, good for everyone, if possible. But they also have a very active imagination. Now, Pisceans have this ability, I don't know where it comes from, but I've seen it on a number of occasions, to delve deep, 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 deep into the unconscious mind and to bring up treasures from the deep. It's like the trawling bucket that goes right down to the bottom of the sea, trawls along the bottom, and pulls up all these goodies from the bottom. And there'll be some starfish in there. There'll be various rocks and shells and maybe some pirate's gold and some other bits and pieces that you think, oh, that's great stuff, good, valuable stuff. But there'll also be a lot of detritus. There'll be bits of seaweed. There'll be old crisp packets that somehow have floated down there. There'll be Coke tins and broken bottles and all sorts of manner of stuff. And, of course, some fish. Now, the Pisceans, and I've seen this on a number of occasions with Pisces, they have this ability to dredge all this stuff up, and some of it is incredibly valuable. And you say, thank God someone went down there and got that up, because nobody else is going to be able to get it. They found something of real value here that everyone else has neglected. But it's all mixed up with this other junk. And the problem is that the Pisces tend to see it all as equal. And they'll mix up the junk with the good stuff and be very protective and not want to lose any of it. So they have an active imagination. They're also quite psychic. Many Pisces that I've met are psychic. What do I mean by psychic? Well, you've heard of people can read palms or stare into crystal balls or interpret your dreams. These are all considered to be psychic abilities, but it's actually something more than that. It's actually having a certain faculty open, which we all have, but for most of us it's dormant. But more often with Pisces, it's kind of open, and they're kind of intuitive in a way that can see even into the future. And if they develop it, they can actually become clairvoyants and psychics, many of them. And they can also be extremely spiritual people. It's an interesting thing about we're living through the age of Pisces. And one of the ways I see this time, what has been a conflict. Pisces represents two fish. The two fish are joined together by a sort of umbilical cord. There's one fish pulling this way and the other fish is pulling that way. Which fish is going to win? Which is going to pull strongest? So there's this sense that this last period of our history, the last 2,000 plus years, the age of Pisces, has been all about this dilemma of the two fish. Now, one fish, the symbol of the fish, is very often associated with Jesus Christ, symbolized by the fish in the early church. Did you know that the bishop's hat is designed to look like the head of a fish? Just a little sideline there. But it's interesting that the initials of Jesus Christ is JC. But so also are the initials of Julius Caesar, JC. And one of the things that Jesus said was, who do you serve, God or Caesar? Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, unto God that which is God's. So the whole Christian era has actually been this tension between the two sides of the spiritual side and the temporal, pulling in different directions. Temporal side demanding that honour, respect be given to the king, the emperor, and the spiritual side demanding that people follow the way of Jesus and the way of Christianity. So there has been this tension between these two sides of our character. which has led also to the sense of the highest calling being martyrdom. In other words, standing up for Jesus and what Jesus stood for, right up to the point of death. And that is also connected very much with the whole Piscean mentality. I would rather be a martyr to the cause than to abandon the cause. And we're seeing it again happening with Islam, where we have these, what we would see as being crazed suicide bombers who believe themselves to be standing up absolutely for their cause, right up to the point of death, and everybody else's death as well, but that doesn't come into their equation so much. This is such kind of last fling, as I see it, of the age of Pisces. Almost a throwback. We thought we got beyond that when we moved into the age of Aquarius, or so we thought in the 1960s. But then we seem to be getting a kind of an ebb and flow a bit over this period of time. We've gone back into this whole kind of religious conflict thing in these last days of the age. So it's all connected with psychism and what's happening in the undercurrents of the unconscious. And Pisces people are more aware of this than most. So their good qualities are they're highly sensitive. They're aware. They sense things in a way many other people don't, of what's happening with the collective unconscious. And I talked about that in one of the earlier lectures connected with alchemy, and I expect we'll be talking about it in other ones to come. But the collective unconscious is kind of a level of consciousness that belongs to mankind as a whole. And instead of having contents which are memories, it has contents which are archetypes. And these archetypes manifest. For example, the manifestation of Nazism was a re-emergence, in many respects, of the archetypes of the old Roman Empire, with the carrying of the eagle banners and the Führer and the raising of the right arm in a salute. These are all very Roman things. The archetype of the Virgin Mary is connected with other archetypes such as Isis, but I'm not going to go into that at the moment. But Pisces people are more aware at this level of what's happening than most. And they're compassionate, as I said, but they also have a sort of magnetism about them. Pisces people sense atmospheres, and they also have a kind of atmosphere that's kind of quite sensual in a certain way. And the problem with Pisces, even more than with Cancer, is that they can get carried away with their own kind of fantasies, their own kind of inner life, and can very easily, or certainly more easily than most, adopt a life, a view of life which is based on their own projections and suppositions rather than any kind of logic. They invent their own reality, in effect, and even if that reality is completely out of step with the entire rest of the world, they will believe that beyond anything else. So Pisces people can be the most eccentric of all within the signs of the Zodiac. They can literally create their own entire reality, their own history, their own view of nature, their own view of the world, and they won't be gainsaid. Nobody can tell them differently. They won't listen, because as far as they're concerned, the rest of the world simply just doesn't understand them. So the things that Pisces have to watch out for, well, drug addiction, alcoholism, delusions. The last one is demonic possession. Yes, demonic possession. What does that really mean? Well, I don't think any of us really know exactly what we mean by that, except that people can be taken over by something bigger than their own ego consciousness. And that is the downside, really, of being mediumistic or psychic, that you can lose your own identity be swallowed up by some archetype or some other kind of larger reality than yourself, and it can be a real problem one way or another. I don't want to go into that in any further depth, but I would just point out that Pisces are perhaps more susceptible to this than most. So the image I would give you of Pisces is again one that's, I think, quite familiar to most of us, and that's the image of a clairvoyant medium gazing into a crystal ball. Whether you think that this is complete nonsense, or whether you think that there are people who have this psychic ability and can see into the future, I'll leave it for you to decide. But those people, whatever else they are, they're ruled over by Pisces. So that brings us to the end of our little tour of the Zodiac, which I hope you've enjoyed. And what I'm going to cover in the next lecture will be about the 12 houses and how you can begin to, even without having any tables of reference or knowing anything about how to compute an astrological horoscope, you can make a rough one for yourself as long as you know your time of birth and your date of birth, and you can work out quite a bit about yourself, about your strengths and your temperament, but above all about the windows that you're looking out of and the gates that you should be trying to go back through. Thank you very much.